Remember to subscribe for daily top Reddit stories. Okay, story time. Serious, what was your biggest we need to leave now moment? When I was about 16, I went to visit my grandmother at her place. The smell of natural gas was intense, even though Nana didn't seem to notice it much. She was groggy, sort of half asleep, not her usual responsive self. So I made her get out of the house at once and opened the windows and doors. I called Dad and he reported it to the gas company, who sent inspectors right away. They shut off the gas valve in the street immediately and sent a repair crew to fix a leaking joint in the gas supply pipe. The inspector said that if I hadn't acted then and there, the probability was great that there would soon have been an explosion. I've wrote about this before. I was in a mall in Indonesia and two tourists seemed to be having problems communicating with the cashier at a bookstore. So I helped translate. They wanted to buy me drinks to thank me. Told them it's not necessary and I have to get back to my mom soon. They told me to meet them for dinner. Told them I have to have dinner at home. They told me to sneak out and meet them after dinner. At this point, a bookstore staff noticed something was wrong and went up to question them. My sister and I dashed off while they were distracted. Continued wandering around the mall and realized they were following us. To see if we were just paranoid, we ducked into a lingerie store since we figured two men won't usually need to go lingerie shopping together. They followed us in, ran so quickly back to the jewelry store our mom was at. The store had intimidating security guards and I guess that stopped those guys. I was 11. My sister was 10. Probably 2 months after my wedding, I invited my then best friend, maid of honor, to a party my husband and I were going to. She agreed. Sometime into it, I'm drunk and in the pool and my husband swims out to me to tell me she just asked him to sleep with her. I have never sobered up or left somewhere so fast. Showed up to her party. Some people were outside fighting. My girlfriend at the time and I decided to leave. Not long after that some guys that were a part of the first fight came back with more and a shooting occurred. Woodstock 99. Felt the energy of the grossly overpacked crowd. The building rage. And looked my friends and said we need to go. They stayed. I left. Shortly after fired and riots started and my friends lost everything they had with them. Tents, clothes, food, everything. When you have 300k people shoulder to shoulder in 104-degree humidity and charge $4 for a bottle of water and have half as many bathrooms as needed, you're gonna have a bad time. Met this cute girl at a party, spent the whole night dancing and flirting. Offered to drive her home and she agreed. We were making out in the car in front of her house when another car pulls up with their headlights beaming at us. I ask if that's a neighbor and if we're blocking their driveway. She replies no. That's my husband. Husband's car door opens and I nope the duck out of there. Dropped her straight back at the party and never saw her again. Her excuse was that they were separated and he shouldn't have a problem with it. I sure wasn't sticking around to find out. So I was waiting at the train station to pick up a friend of mine. I was early so I decided to stand in the sun right outside of the station. A guy with a bicycle walked up to me asking in broken English if I knew how late the train would arrive. After I answered the question he stayed around and started talking to me. Now I know that's not weird at all but the things he asked and the way he acted and looked just gave me a creepy vibe. Eventually he asked if I would walk with him while he dropped his bicycle off. I didn't want to because the place to store bicycles at this station is very secluded and to be honest I didn't want to be alone with this guy. So I noped out and walked into the station. He started yelling at me, calling me names but at that moment the train came in and it got very busy. So he left. A few months later I read this article in the local paper about a girl being raped at the station. They had put a drawing of a guy next to the article as he was not yet caught. It was the same guy. To this day I'm very happy I didn't go with him. Grocery shopping with my grandma. She's tired, normal for her, but she's getting a bit slower and dragging her leg more than usual. At the checkout counter I saw her face was a little droopy and I said we are leaving now and going to her. They gave her a bottle of water for the car ride which she ended up choking on and vomiting up all the water. Called ahead to us so they were ready and they took care of her ASAP. She was having a stroke and they were able to help her quick enough so that she didn't have any long lasting issues. About 2 months ago I'd stayed up past my usual bedtime, and as soon as I got in bed I smelled something odd and was hearing some inconsistent banging and clattering from downstairs. I don't live in a great neighborhood so none of this was unusual, but I got out of bed to check anyway and saw flames licking up the side of the building. Yelled at my wife to get out of bed and threw on some clothes and we hightailed it out. Our building has a shared wall with the next, and that one had an apartment on the ground floor fully engulfed by the time we made it outside. Ended up condemning the whole building. I was the first one to call 911. Have been jerking myself awake in the night pretty consistently since then. The owner of a Mexican restaurant threw 2 young farm workers at the bar out to the parking lot. They were drunk as monkeys and proceeded to try to fight, but mostly just leaned on each other, all in front of the picture window while the place is full of people. Then one runs to his trucks and burns rubber out of there. I said, "Time to go, honey." She says, "What? Those assholes aren't done and I'm not going to be here when the shooting starts." We left. It did. Not long after. Edit. If you want eat authentic, go where the farm workers eat. My so speaks Spanish. These guys had been escalating the bullshit for a while. Their blood was way up. I threw 320s on the table and got on out of there. Late afternoon in the summer. I'm waiting in the bus station near my house. Most businesses are closed. Not a lot of cars in the street. Guy passes in front of me. He passes again 2 minutes later, watching me suspiciously. Alarm starts to go in my head, screaming to me that I need to leave and get the duck off here. But I ignore it since the bus will come in 10 minutes. Third time he passes, he charges to me, pushing me to the wall with his cuck out. I freeze for some seconds, then start punching and kicking him. I manage to get away and the rest is history. Yep, trust your guts, guys. Girls camp. My last year, me and a small group of girls wanted to climb to the top of this big hill that has a beautiful lookout above the trees and clear view of the sky. It was a new moon and zero light pollution. We grabbed our flashlights and got on the trail. About 3/4 of the way up, the 2 girls leading us stopped dead in their tracks at the same time. One whispered to the other, "Do you feel that?" I was right behind them and heard what they said. I looked up and around. I didn't see anything, but something in the air made the hair on my neck stand on end. It was just too quiet. I started to feel very vulnerable and scared. One of the girls in front turned and said, "We need to go back. Don't run." One girl asked why not run, and they said, "So you don't trip." Valid reason, but I don't believe it was the real reason she said it. We were playing hoops in a bad neighborhood. At some point one of the guys we were playing with got real nasty with the "boys leave now. We ain't ducking with you, you need to leave." Real aggressive, etc. I had noticed a black BMW circling around the playground but nothing much else. All his friends started insulting us and pushing us, etc. Which was weird, we were playing with them every weekend. I had given free tutoring classes to one of their brothers. We left. Pissed. That was a damn good playground. And it felt special to play with the thugs. Us being witty nerdy boys. Well, 15 minutes after we left, the black BMW shot at them. Multiple casualties, etc. Edit. My timeline is a bit mixed up. Since I had started giving tutoring classes, etc., it was 15 years ago or so. Not 20 years ago. I am old but not that old. Sorry, but I won't correct my other comments mentioning the timeline. When I was 15, a friend and I went for a lot of walks around town. Small town. Around 5-6k people. We were going to the cyber cafe in town to meet a few friends, and we often took different streets to get places. Just to keep it interesting. We were about to go to Main Street off one of the side streets, and a man on a bicycle approached us. He got off his bike and asked us a couple small talk questions. Something didn't seem right about him. He was probably mid-40s. We both kept inching away but didn't want to come off as too rude. So we answered about the weather or traffic. Then he paused and we said we had to go. And he said, and I'll never forget it, "You look so young. I don't want to get in trouble, but I need to touch someone. I just need to touch you. You should come with me." And he started rambling. I just felt terror. Couldn't even speak. I grabbed my friend's hand and turned. We sprinted the rest of the way to the cafe, and as soon as we were inside we asked to use the phone. I called my mom to pick us up while my friend told the worker what happened and what the guy looked like. A month later I got my first cell phone. Visiting Kowloon in Hong Kong, I ended up walking all day until my feet were killing me. It got dark outside and I was tired, so I decided to drop by a decent looking bar for a drink and a moment to rest my feet. It was all empty except a group of serious looking local men in suits. They kept leering at me the whole time. The most awkward beer I ever had. None of them said a word, but I got the message. You're not supposed to be here, Guelo. About a decade ago, I was driving my Miata with a friend to a track about 4 hours from home. We left after dinner the night before so we could wake up there and get an early start. About an hour from our destination, 11 PM, a crazy summer storm hit. Heavy rain, high wind gusts, lots of debris. I told my buddy that early 90s windshield wipers couldn't keep up. I couldn't see shit, and I just felt like I was white knuckling the steering wheel. I decided to hit the exit. We'd get some late night food at a Waffle House and wait out the storm. We sat down and I had a TV in sight and I was casually watching. Almost immediately, a weather map came up and showed a tornado pass right over where we would have been a few minutes later had I not exited. My friends and I stopped at a 7-Eleven around midnight in a sketchy neighborhood. We'd taken a wrong turn and were trying to find our way back to the highway. 2 police officers were getting coffee and donuts. A group of local youths came in, kind of roughly messing with each other. The police officers looked at them, looked at us, looked at each other and power walked out of the store. My friends and I decided not to complete our snack food purchases and made to leave. And then one of the youths yelled to his friends that we'd called him a racial epithet when we hadn't even spoken to them. I'm glad my car started on the first try, and glad no one was coming the other way as I ran a couple stop signs. This literally happened yesterday. So I was at work at a retail store and this guy with 2 massive buff guys came into the store to interrogate me about my cousin, who is on Menadrugas and probably owes them money. So they started to tell me to stop lying to them about me not knowing about my cousin. For more backstory, in 5 inches 2 female and I'm not muscular at all. So I went to find my manager for help but she wasn't in the store because she was on her lunch break, so I had to hide in the work bathrooms out the back until my manager found me. It was quite terrifying and I don't even talk to my cousin because he is a terrible human being. Went to friend's house that I had slept over at a couple times already. He left the room and noticed something under his pillow. Lifted it to find a handgem. We were 12. I stupidly even pick it up to see if it was plastic. Confirming that it is metal and reasonably heavy. I grab my sheet and tell him I need to leave, but he stops and tells me it's a BB gum he spray painted black. I stayed, but these days I question the truth of that situation. Driving to Disney with Hubs and 2 little kids, 4 and 5, stopped at a gas station in Tifton, Gar at about 10 PM. Wander in a little bleary-eyed with the 2 kids looking for the bathroom. Clark looks at me funny and points. While I'm in there I hear she's got 2 babies with her man. Just let them pee and go. I grab both kids and walk straight back to the car with only a small head nod to the clerk. Hubs was done pumping gas and about to go in himself. I yelled for everyone to get in the car. I would explain later. As soon as we pulled out I called 911. The operator told me they were already en route and to vacate the scene. Took my info and wished us a fun trip. Walked into a gas station robbery with 2 little kids. Peed and left with no issues. Bad gas wasn't that bad of a guy and let us go. I was a teenager and my male neighbor hired my preteen sister and I to clean his apartment. I was in the middle of doing the dishes when the guy started rambling about he didn't want to hurt us but he had a good 12 inches. I told my sister we had to go now and she argued that we were not done and wouldn't get paid. I convinced her to leave and we ran home where I told my dad what happened. Dad went and talked to the guy. I don't know what transpired between them but later neighbor guy comes over with a black eye, apologized and paid us. At Reading Rock Festival, watching a band not too near the front. Far back enough that there is space between each people and I was standing with my girlfriend, now wife. In front of me these 2 teenagers were snogging and like moving about as though they were trying to dance to the music at the same time. Which obviously is not great for coordination, personal space and balance. The bloke was probably about 6 feet 3 inches and muscly, and during his escapade sucking the face off this girl, he stamps like full strength on my foot. So obviously I shout out about it. I said, ouch, Jesus ducking Christ. Why don't you two get a ducking room? Well, Broseph with his hat on backwards didn't like that. He walked off, leaving the drunk girl he was with just stumbling around, and returns with about 6 other guys, all probably called Chad, and start asking me if I still want them go get a room. I said yes, grabbed my now wife's hand and ran. Bit of a pissy move on my part, but still, was definitely a yikes, we need to leave before I get beaten up for yelling at someone bigger than me, even though they were totally in the wrong. I was hiking with 2 friends and we were crossing through some big farms. One of the fenced off areas had a herd of cows in it. They had like 20 calves and 150 cows. As we were walking through, they slowly ganged up on us from behind and literally encircled us, facing inwards while standing next to each other. I think they surrounded us by like 300 degrees before we realized what was happening, and ducking ran like hell the last 50 meters to the edge of the fenced area. I think the opening between the 2 ends of the open circle was like 20 meters and they were like 20 meters away from us. That was pretty insane, to be honest. I will never forget it. I learned to differentiate between the behavior of one creature opposed to a herd. It blew my mind how they all worked together in silence. I have never experienced fear physically like in that moment. When we hopped the fence, they followed us to the edge. There was one black bull in particular who didn't seem to like we got away. I always assumed he was the leader. Was 15/16 at a house party with my good friend, another girl. There were some gate crashers who turned up, which weren't unusual at London house parties, but these guys were older, and there was just a vibe. A girl I vaguely knew was very drunk and being surrounded by them, and I asked her if she was okay and she told me to duck off. I'm fine. I looked at my friend and said to her, I'm gonna call my mum and dad to come get me, do you want a lift? My parents were always amazing and said to me that if I was at a party or out and for any reason didn't want to be where I was, I could call them and they would come and get me. My parents turned up, coats on over pajamas, and took us both home. Apparently half an hour after we left, someone was stabbed. The girl we had asked earlier was sexually assaulted and lots of stuff was stolen and people beaten up and held up at knife point. I had such a feel in the air that I've hardly felt before or since, and knew we needed to not be there. I was at a club and a guy pulled up and parked next to us as we were getting out to head in. The guy then proceeded to reach in the back of his SUV and pull out a shotgun. He looked over at us and told us it's finna go down. We got back in our vehicle and noped out. Was in Mexico City with family including 2 daughters. Grabbed a cab on the street around 10 PM to take us back to the hotel. I was somewhat familiar with the area since we had been there 4 or 5 days already. Cabbie totally passes the hotel district and starts heading away from the part of town we were in. Streets were getting more and more residential. I demanded that he pull over and we GTFO and walked back to the hotel. Probably 3 or 4 miles. He was probably just padding the fare, but I was not going to take a chance on being kidnapped, so we flew. Shoot, I gotta go get wasted. Thanks for listening. If I sparked joy, hit me with a like and subscribe. I make new videos every day. Till then, check out another video or leave a comment. I love you. Have a great day, you beautifully impressive person.